when I joined the company called Robinhood as the first finance hire. I started meeting with product managers and said how things should be built. As we're going IPO in a year, even though it wouldn't have happened probably for another 5 years. But I had a mindset that it's better to think of more simplistic processes in the beginning and make them simple and just scalable than try to do it backwards when you spend a lot of time reconciling. I would say counterintuitive is partnering with product and engineers as part of your job, but it's truly a really great investment if you do so. There's so much value that you can get out of investing into those relationships.
Welcome to Turpentine Finance, a podcast where we talk with top founders and finance leaders about what it takes to architect success. Our guests speak candidly about big business inflections, market curveballs, and how they approach decision-making so that you have the tactics and mental models for when the pressure is on. I'm your host, Sasha Orlov, founder, CEO, and self-professed finance nerd. You ready? Let's dive in.
Hello. So welcome, everybody. In case you don't know who Nadia is, you have definitely know the companies that she has helped build. So this small little accounting and auditing firm called Ernst & Young, the very early days of a multi-billion-dollar payments company called Square, then the early days of this multi-billion-dollar trading app called Robinhood, and then a serial CFO at Trusted Health and Strike, and an investor and advisor to many startups. So there's a lot of really interesting insights that Nadia can share, but I want to focus this episode on a couple things. Sort of your learnings from scaling two of the most successful startups of all time, how you grow your career or how other people can grow their career from a CPA to a CFO, and then any advice on how to best support and work with these wonderful yet challenging, ambitious founders through the ups and downs of company building. So let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Nadia.
Hi, very excited to be here.
All right, here we go. Let's just dive back right into the early days of your background. What got you excited about accounting?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was actually going to business school undergrad, and there was no defined future, what I want to do. There were a few functions that I considered: investment banking, Big Four, as well as consulting. And actually, as I started meeting people from different industries, I just saw that Big Four people are the nicest, the happiest. They seem to actually be really friendly and enjoy what they do. Investment bankers try to sell really hard, but seemed really overworked and exhausted. And consultants, I think, also sounded very interesting, but the travel aspect actually scared me quite a bit. It sounded like 90% of time they were on the road. And it just, in general, going to business school and learning what Big Four does in the Bay Area, specifically type of customers they have and clients they serve, was really interesting that I can actually start working with some big names. And as I was trying to focus on that direction, I actually fell in love with accounting, and the classes were very interesting, very logical, and I was really interested to gain that skill set. But I would say, I don't think anyone is born ever to say, I'm going to be an accountant. But as I was taking classes and as I was meeting people from the industry, they seemed to be the right fit for me to start my career. And in general, I would say, as I was meeting people that succeeded in the finance field, which I was attracted to, it seemed like a lot of people had a Big Four background, and it was a great foundation for starting accounting skill set. So that's how I landed at Big Four. Actually was looking at all four, and EY was just somehow magically the choice based on actually mainly people that I liked. All other ones also seemed really nice.
I mean, I love accounting, so you're speaking my language along the way. Never worked at a Big Four firm like EY. I bet it's great trading. What are some of the things, as you look back, are the key skills or experiences that you learned from your time there?
Yeah, I would say the biggest one is navigating through ambiguity. I know it sounds maybe cliche, but You literally come in and everyone is really busy working on some busy project, and you're supposed to learn very different from what you have learned at school, skill set, looking at actual documentation, looking at actual processes, and starting to actually understand what that means and significance of what you do, and actually how you make sure that you know the processes are correct, using some of the textbook knowledge. I would say just when you start, you try to follow what you've been told, but a lot of times you don't even have much guidance. So you have to navigate with just learning through asking a lot of questions. So you have to be curious, and you have to think outside of the box, even though it may not actually sound like accounting field, but that's what it is in the beginning. And I would say, generally, I think the biggest skill set that you learn is that it could be really busy sometimes, and just being curious, being excited, asking questions, and keeping a positive attitude is one of the most critical skill sets also to gain. And that's actually what helps the team the most. You learn to work as a team. That's another one. You are the first one to join with no any skills, but everyone else actually knows what they're doing. And your job was to make sure that you're just helping them, not actually disrupting them. And I would say the other one is just really for the first time learning how to talk to customers. And I remember a few times when I had to go and meet a CFO of some company, and I'm just like entry-level auditor, but I would walk into the room and say, hello, can I do a walkthrough on this process to understand it better? And the CFO itself would be shaking, which was very interesting how the perception of auditor on the other side could be, because I was scared to go and ask questions to CFO, but CFO seemed to be also very scared to answer questions, because oftentimes when you say we go through audits, we have auditor coming in, everyone thinks, oh my God, something scary is going to happen. And it's really more building relationship and the way how you can learn about process in a way that is actually not as scary, but yeah, it's very interesting. What I would say those are the fundamentals that I learned in the first few years as I was going through my career at Big Four.
My guess is that's going to come up quite a few times in fear-inducing and fear-alleviating situations. So you decide then to take this after a couple years at EY and go in-house to a company. Why?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I joined EY, I always said, I'm on the partner track. I thought I'm going to go and stay there for 10, 15 years, become a partner, and that's my choice. And to be honest with you, it was not as much of a career choice or anything, but it was more related to the company that I joined. I actually followed Square, which I joined from business school. When they launched on seed stage, I actually did a case study about them at Berkeley, and we had to pitch to real investors, and I learned the business inside out, and I followed them. And actually, 2.5 years in at EY, I just saw opportunity to work there on the accounting finance team, and just wrote my story on how passionate I am about the company, and decided to give it a shot. I didn't think I'll get it. It was really more industry knowledge type of job, and I was just still learning, building my skill set in accounting. But I was able to get it, and I ended up being one of the first few people in the accounting department. And it was more really because I was passionate about the company, and I did not think I'm actually going to switch that fast. It was just more trying to take a chance, but the chance actually became a reality.
How big when you started? What stage was the company at?
It was, I would say, already growth stage. Let's say Series D, but it was around 300 people, which, I mean, compared to today, it's tens of thousands of people. And public company is very small. Accounting team was 5 people. Finance team was 5 people. So pretty small. And I was coming in for the first time into the industry job myself, never been actually working at a startup. So it was definitely a shock. And yeah, most of the people on the team also came with a similar background, trying to figure out how to build processes.
So let's go back and see if we can remember some of this time. You're going in house first time into an accounting role. How does the role for an auditor prepare you for, and what's the biggest surprise day one? And you're like, oh, this is different.
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise is that you come to realization pretty fast. You actually have no idea how accounting works. You think you do when you audit things, but you actually don't know how they are done. Let's say it's much easier to review someone's work and give an opinion than actually build things. And that's kind of what you realize, that building and reviewing someone else's work are two very different things. And I mean, it was a very interesting transition. Definitely the skill set, the foundation, technical knowledge is there, but most of the skill sets you actually end up building while you actually joining and building understanding of the processes and actually how to build them, because they do not exist, by asking general questions and just thinking from first principles, how this should be actually done versus how maybe it's done today. But yeah, that would be the biggest one, I would say.
If you were to look back at young Nadia stepping into the role and say, hey, I'm going to give you a piece of advice before day one of going in-house, what's that piece of advice that you give them?
Don't come with attitude that you know everything just because you came as experienced auditor, because you have no idea. And I made the mistake coming in so confident, having Big Four as my resume, and thought I know everything. So, and later on, I saw many people after me come in a similar capacity. So it's just always interesting and funny in a way to look at this. I would say, assume you know nothing and ask a lot of questions. And don't be shy to admit that you actually probably don't know anything, and ask for help.
I think it's the biggest challenge is how to admit that in a confident way, because we all get over our skis. That's how we grow a little bit. Talking about sort of growing and stretching the role. So we start at this relatively small 300-person payments company that is fairly popular in the Bay Area and growing in popularity, and the company decides it's time to IPO. How do you balance your day-to-day job with IPO readiness?
Yeah, and I would say when I joined, there was no plan to go IPO. We still actually were a payments company that did not have as a diversified line of products, and it was really just starting. So it was just there before as hockey stick type of growth. So it was about a year in, and luckily I got into a position where I learned a lot of things. And it takes a year, I would say, a good year to actually be confident in the areas that you do. That's when the company decided that we need to work on IPO readiness. I don't think companies usually decide to go public at a certain time frame, but usually they have a desire to be able to IPO in a certain time frame. And we decided we want to be IPO ready by X date. And how do you combine? I would say it's definitely a lot more work. And I would lie if I say it's work-life balance and you just work on your day-to-day and then running IPO after lunch break. But I would say a lot of it is very helpful in the way that you actually think about how to streamline processes in a very efficient way, which actually would eventually help also your day-to-day job. So I can give a few examples. As a fintech company, so what I focus a lot on is specifically cash, which sounds maybe basic, because it is most of the time basic, but not in the fintech companies. So you have to make sure ins and outs are all correct, all receivables, all payables, and it's huge from all lines of products and from all merchants, from all customers, everything is balancing. And of course, as you can imagine, companies, when they start from scratch, startup, they never optimize for things like this. They never prioritize for building great systems and reconciliation processes. So as we actually decided to be IPO ready, that was the biggest area where we saw a lot of opportunity to build better process to be ready. We needed to really automate it. We at some point had 5-6 people working on this area, so had a team just to reconcile all the activity, right? And we decided, okay, we need to start looking into tooling. We need to start being able to close the books really fast, not 2 weeks in on this area, but has to be on a public company deadline, which is day 1 or 2 for all balance sheet accounts. And that's actually what the focus was. While you work on your regular work, you were a lot of time strategically thinking, what are the things that I can do to actually improve the process so it helps the company to be IPO ready? So I would say we learned a lot, and we did a lot in order to get there. We actually, as a matter of fact, because it became priority for the company, IPO Readiness, we got more support from other functions. So this is the time where I got to work with a lot of product people, a lot of engineers, and that's really fun because everyone wants the company to succeed. And that's the only probably most focused period of time in the company where IPO Readiness motivates all other departments. And even though it was, I would say, additional work, it was type of work that probably every person would enjoy because they work with various teams on solving interesting problems. And that helps also the focus and the prioritization for the company helps overall not to work late hours because you're getting a lot of additional resources with this task. But I would say that the reality is it's extra work. And I think everyone is always excited to get that experience. It's definitely a fun experience, very unusual. But I do not want to create a reality where I would say it's easy. But I will say, because of the mistakes or / lessons at Square, where I would say company did not prioritize as fast some of the processes in early stages. When I joined the following company called Robinhood as the first finance hire, I actually took that lesson with me and build systems and recon processes from scratch. In the first day when I joined, I started meeting with product managers and said how things should be built. As we're going IPO in a year, even though it wouldn't have happened probably for another 5 years. But I had a mindset that it's better to think of more simplistic processes in the beginning and make them simple and just scalable than try to do it backwards when you spend a lot of time reconciling and cleaning up things that grew because you never thought of them in the beginning. And then once you're actually getting ready to be public, you really have to address them. So, I mean, they're all great lessons. And while in one, it was probably longer hours to clean up this process, in other experiences, it was not even a challenge at all because things were built correctly from the get-go.
Hey, we'll get back to the conversation in a moment after a word from our sponsors.
Quick math. The less your business spends on operations, on multiple systems, on delivering your product or service, the more margin you have and the more money you keep. But with higher expenses on materials, employees, distribution, and borrowing, everything costs more. So to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are graduating to Netsuite by Oracle. Netsuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one platform. That's one source of truth. With Netsuite, you reduce IT costs because Netsuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required, accessed from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems and improve efficiency by bringing all your major business processes into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. Over 37,000 businesses have graduated to Netsuite, so do the math and make the move. Startup founders and execs running scaling businesses know all too well how easily their systems break down and expenses skyrocket. Netsuite is a proven way to cut costs and boost performance. And by popular demand, Netsuite has extended its one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for a few more weeks. Head to netsuite.com/zen. That's netsuite.com/zen. netsuite.com/zen. Today, I want to make a bit of a personal appeal to anyone working on a SaaS app or website. If you spend any time on the internet, you probably have interacted with chatbots in the bottom right corner of sites. Most are really annoying. AI is making them better. But still, I often just get really useless generic answers out of these and end up just wanting to talk to a real human. It felt to me like AI shouldn't just make chatbots marginally better at text responses, but that they should enable a new type of web assistant. Something that feels like you're talking to a human support agent who is co-browsing alongside you. CommandBar is building that user assistant. Companies embed it into their web app, mobile app, or website, and they get a fully generative chatbot that can give personalized responses that refer to a user's past chats, perform actions directly on behalf of the user, like looking up account info, and even start browsing alongside the user to show them how to do something, like a tour guide. It can also nudge users when they seem confused or frustrated. I love when I encounter CommandBar in websites. It's white labeled, but at this point I can tell right away. CommandBar already reaches more than 20 million end users with major customers like HashiCorp, Gusto, Freshworks, 6th Sense, and more. See for yourself at commandbar.com/MOZ or follow the link in the show notes.
Okay, I love it. So you major in accounting, become a CPA, you work in a big accounting firm, you do the IPO Readiness, the dream come true for many accountants along the way, even though probably in the moment it's quite stressful. And then you mentioned you make this change and go over to this other company, Robinhood. Give us a little sense about what's the size of Robinhood at the time, and then to build upon the point, you've learned all of this and you come in and you said one of the lessons is about setting up processes even and simple and then evolving it. Is this something that you just do? Is this something that the founders were encouraging you to do, or you're just like, I'm doing this because I know it's the right thing to do?
I would say the second. So I joined Robinhood when it's about 50 people company. I actually joined it so similar to Square story. So Square went public, great success. We're all enjoying it. Very interesting. And just somehow through my friends, I was actually looking to make some first purchase of stock I was interested in. And someone said, oh, you should check out this app called Robinhood that just launched and they're doing beta. And I downloaded it, played with it. I was like, wow, this is so amazing. And I just emailed on LinkedIn founders of the company. My, of course, background by the time I was reaching out to them was like Big Four and someone who worked as part of the finance team, been part of IPO success for one of the hottest fintechs in the Bay Area. So they actually, of course, responded right away. They said they don't have any opening, but would love to talk. And I said, I'll take anything. Like, I just want to come and help you. And joined about 50 people company. Founders are first-time founders. And they saw me as someone who is an expert in the field and really always relied on me to make the right decisions on what needs to be built. When I said we need to build reconciliation process or build very good structured backend for all financial processes, no one ever even challenged that because I just explained to them how it took much longer to clean it up when you don't invest in it up front, and it didn't seem to be as big of an investment to begin with. So yeah, everyone relied on me as an expert. So I was very lucky that I actually could navigate and was really empowered to build things at the next level, which was definitely in a more senior capacity. While at Square, I was part of the team, and we did it with many people, and we had a leader who was guiding us. Here, I was the one, and I learned from the best, and I brought that experience to Robinhood. Helped a lot.
I want to dive into that, but before, I think a lot of people would love to have the opportunity to work in an accounting or finance role in such a rocket ship, and you've had it twice. As you're transitioning from the role to from Square to Robinhood, what's the thing that got you excited about the team? Obviously the product, you liked it. What's the thing that got you excited about the leadership team there? And what do you think is the thing that got them excited about you?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great question. What I liked about the team, that they just really thought from first principles, very logical, and I really like the ambition. the mission, the plan, the excitement to take over the world. And I mean, I'll be honest, I talked to them, they were very early in the journey. And I like the design, the passion was very not obvious. It's going to happen, but I really enjoyed the drive. And I like that both founders actually could demonstrate how they see that could be executed. So really, I would say that helped me. I think it's very critical to understand who you are going to work with. To your point, like why you asking this question, it's very important to see that founders have vision. They know how it's going to grow. They can logically answer questions that are not BS sales type of questions, but actually down to earth explanations when I ask them about like certain product or about roadmap or about the plan. They actually can answer it in a way that tells me that they're really thinking about it. And what they liked about me, it's very difficult to probably think about all of things that they thought through. But as I mentioned, my experience already working for one of the biggest fintechs that was very successful exited back when I applied, it was definitely very helpful. I think they really enjoyed that I was passionate about what they're going to accomplish. And in general, very direct person. That's kind of more my personality. I think they really enjoyed because for early stage type of startup, when you're joining as a first time, like as a first finance hire, you're really looking not for probably someone who is a smooth sales talker, but someone who actually can get to the bottom of things and actually either build them or solve for them. Again, there are different stages, you learn different skill sets, but as you're coming for the first time to help someone to build financial processes, that's probably very critical to know how things are done inside out and being able to actually execute on it.
So part of this was also expanding the responsibilities from just accounting to finance. And so you've studied, you got your CPA, you worked at Big Four, you worked in accounting, you worked through accounting through an IPO, and now you're making a bit of an expansion of responsibilities and role. How do you get up to speed quickly with a new set of responsibilities?
I would say actually Square was a very good preparation for me because when you're working as part of accounting function in a company that has FP&A or finance department, we call it finance and strategy at Square. We worked a lot. So accounting works on actuals and how the books closed and how to get audited. And finance department works on understanding those numbers and how to project them into the future or to understand how to analyze them better and see what are the opportunities out there. I would say potentially at Square, it was a very unique type of actually finance department, which I really enjoyed. And I tried to recreate that at Robinhood. Finance team really was like, in a way, very strategic function, where they not only focus on typical FP&A, but they really focus on monetization, business development, and strategy. And it actually led accounting team to take on a lot of FP&A responsibilities. So when I was coming to Robinhood, I already had exposure to being exposed to FP&A function. Before, I've seen and worked on certain initiatives with finance and strategy team on a strategic side. And I was very strong on the accounting side, which was actually the most critical requirement in the beginning. And really having that experience, though, helped me to understand what it takes for both functions to exist. And I'll say that accounting was my priority when I came in. I needed to make sure actually Robinhood is a regulated company that had to pass audits on public company deadline when I joined. So I had to make sure that we build the processes for that. But also, as I got pretty good at that, I was able to start focusing on finance and understand how we start looking at our numbers, how we can think of them in the future. I would also say what was very unique at Robinhood specifically, we had and still have extremely interesting exposure in working with data team. So that's my very unique experience where I partnered very close with data, and they helped me to provide a lot of actually finance insights. So, and that was actually partially also inherited from Square as well, where we all had to query data sets, had to be able to understand how general data sets work, because we were also stretching resources. So when I came to Robinhood, I partnered very closely with data team, and data team helped me to build a lot of initial foundation as it comes to fundamentals of forecasting of the business, key metrics, and we spent a lot of time actually thinking together through it. So I would say some of it is desire, asking questions, as I always would say, but also really partnering and utilizing resources that are available, which are maybe not always obvious. But yeah, I think, and also data team really enjoyed that they can help to think through forecasting of revenue and how certain launches can help us to scale the business. So yeah, I would say that's kind of what I've seen through my experience. But again, it's maybe more unique opportunity, but the reason maybe it's unique is because you ask for it. So no one will say no to you. If you want to do it in a especially early stage startup, founders definitely did not want to do finance or forecasting. They say, look, we want to do it, go for it.
Hey, we'll get back to the conversation in a moment after a word from our sponsors.
Fast forward to the end of 2024. Think about your goals. What can you do right now to give yourself the best chance of succeeding? If learning a new language is on your list, you absolutely need to check out Babbel. Babbel offers a range of learning tools, self-study app lessons, live classes, and even podcasts, which have always been my favorite way to learn. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Babbel isn't just a game to kill time and make you feel like you're learning a language. It's not overly academic or rigid either. It's all about learning language for the real world. Babbel stands out because it's designed by real people using a modern conversational teaching approach. It's not always easy, nothing worth doing ever is, but it's straightforward and designed to help you start speaking in just 3 weeks. With Babbel, I was able to brush up on my intermediate Spanish to ramp up for travel to Argentina last year, and was able to set clear goals based on how much time each week I wanted to practice. Join millions of Babbel language learners across all age groups. Here's a special limited time offer for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only at babbel.com/Torenberg. That's babbel.com/Torenberg, spelled BABBEL.com/Torenberg. Rules and restrictions may apply.
There's a world where your CRM is powerful, easily configured, and deeply intuitive. Attio makes that a reality. Attio is a radically new CRM built specifically for the new era of companies. It's flexible, easily configures to your unique data structures, and works for any go-to-market motion from self-serve to sales-led. Attio automatically enriches your contacts, syncs your emails and calendar, lets you create powerful reports, and quickly build Zapier-style automations. The next era of companies deserves more than a one-size-fits-all CRM with an outdated UX. Join 11 Labs, Replicate, Modal, and more. Try Attio instantly at attio.com. That's attio.com.
So if we think about that, you're stepping into a role, it's a small company growing quite quickly. How do you know what is enough process? And how do you know what is enough forecasting? You can have, a company rarely says, I have enough resources to do everything that I want. So how do you know when you're coming in kind of day one through, how do you evolve these processes? Where do you start?
I would say the answer is you don't, you learn. You learn it as the company grows and through your experience, especially as the first time doing this. Definitely learned a lot, but I would say you add complexity to how much is needed to be done as you also see that complexity growing, right? So in the beginning, like I said, of my time at Robinhood, the focus was on really making sure that we got the books closed, we got audited on them. But then at some point, and again, the P&L was not very complex, pretty straightforward, and you understand it really well. So by knowing it, you already can tell, okay, I can probably just expand on it and see how it may look like next year. And then once you build one, and I would say my first forecast, I got within like something like 1% for the following year, which everyone liked to joke like how accurate I am. A lot of it was actually from understanding the business inside out and being able to tell how much we can grow. But portion of it, like I mentioned, I partnered with data team that helped me a lot to utilize data science and algorithm that we build to actually also build predictive models as it comes to certain metrics. So definitely they helped me a lot. So I want to take the full credit, but as it comes to understanding of the burn, of the headcount, that was definitely something that I could manage and I could build very good understanding on. But I would say as the business evolves from certain revenues standpoint, from customer user base, you definitely want to learn more. How can we grow more? How can we go to different product lines? And that's when you actually start thinking more in a more complex way. So it's all pretty organic process. You first want to have good understanding on your financial fundamentals, such as what's my revenue, what's my path to profitability, what's my cash runway. But then eventually you want to get more creative and you want to get more complex in the way how you operate. You want to see things by product line. You want to see by geographies. You want to start thinking what things you can add to your general product lines. How can you optimize your burns? And I would say, yeah, as the business is growing, you add that as you have to manage. But as long as you just have general picture, it's, I would say, pretty clear how to do it. More details I added, but you just need to have that general picture and then you should be able to navigate through it.
Good. So as we sort of wrap up this point in your career and we look back, we want to give advice back to all of the accounting teams out there who have a desire to eventually move into finance or a more leadership role. What do you think is the best side project to grab onto? You might not have that responsibility. You say, I'm just going to do this proactively to try and improve myself. What do you do? What do you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, as a matter of fact, I had quite a few people that expressed interest like this in my days at Robinhood, and I helped them to build a transition plan and actually move. I mean, like what I mentioned is trying to partner with finance function on things where you can bring the value. Maybe it could be some things that you are not super excited about, but they could help finance team to take some work off their sleeves. And again, the accounting function is always focused more on closing the books and the actuals. But we also have some good knowledge on some areas that I found to be usually very challenging for finance, people that never had accounting background. For example, equity or internally developed software. They are very technical areas, and they usually, when FP&A team tries to forecast for those or understand them better, they really struggle how to think about it. And I've seen some like basic tasks like this that for accountant could be easy actually to think, hey, I've seen the equity, this is what we do, and this is how we can think of it. Sometimes it could be through headcount planning. Sometimes you could help, hey, I've seen a lot of marketing spend and I know how we've been spending, and I can help to start building forecasts because I've seen all the vendors, all the different work streams. So a lot of times it's based on the work that you've done, and you can just offer more value from your knowledge. And that's where you start partnering. So that's probably the most typical pathway that I've seen people in the accounting field to do in order to move to FP&A. But I also have seen some people from FP&A move to accounting. So it doesn't go always one direction. And I did find it to be interesting that sometimes people in FP&A actually struggle quite a bit understanding how actual books work, and they actually transition to accounting so they can actually build full understanding of financial processes so they can actually be fully functioning CFOs, because sometimes it's really difficult to understand as a CFO why we cannot close the books or what are some challenges that we experience and why. And yeah, if you have done it and if you have addressed it before, it could be a lot easier. So yeah, it's not always one way street though, I would say.
So I think as your career is progressing and you're going from accountant to head of finance and thinking about strategy, there's a lot of skills that you pick up as an accountant that helps give you a set of superpowers as you now step into the CFO role. One of the things that is another part of the role of a CFO is about dealing with both boards and the roles of fundraising. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about how you prepare yourself for this next set of challenging responsibilities in which there's no answer. So talk us through any preparations for board. How does board management start to evolve as you become a CFO?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a big part of the role. And I would say you definitely get exposure as you work on the accounting team. So like I mentioned before, I had a lot of accounting focus in the beginning at Robinhood. And as we were doing fundraising, as we were engaging with more investors, that's where founders started bringing me into conversations on providing some materials, on providing key information to them. And that's how I learned to first communicate with investors in that capacity. Also, funny story, at Robinhood in the early days, we had very basic board process. As you can imagine, early stage companies, they not always focusing on like very heavy slide decks and board materials unless really they're getting to more senior, more mature level. So it was part of evolving actually board process as I actually brought something to Robinhood from Square that I learned process called monthly finance review. Once you close the books, give it a knowledge to stakeholders where the business stands. And as you doing this analysis and putting key metrics together in the monthly way, a lot of it started to actually be utilized in the quarterly manner to board materials, and it helped to evolve board process overall. So from just like giving general business updates to actually demonstrating that, how key metrics work, how financial results evolve over time. So that's, I would say, first as an accounting leader, that's kind of my involvement. But of course, as you becoming CFO, focused on a lot of your job is on managing board process, expectation to the board. I would say that process evolves a lot, and now you actually servicing in a very interesting capacity where you have to be independent to present something to the board, as well as to be the voice for founders, and you always try to find this balance. As company matures, I would say that process also evolves. In the beginning, like Series C, Series D, board process tends to be not as heavy, but as companies are getting ready for IPO, pre-IPO stage, post-IPO, it becomes very heavy in terms of lift as a CFO, how much time you spend on it. It becomes from maybe a couple of days preparation to weeks of preparation for certain reasons. And that's as it comes to board itself. And you definitely manage a lot of relationship and expectation with those people that are key stakeholders. As it comes to investors themselves, I mean, a lot of CFOs get to be involved in fundraising process, which I think is fun. I will say my experience have been different in different companies, as I've been at a few in this capacity. Sometimes founder drives the whole fundraising process, and you're just really helping on due diligence and financial information side, while in some capacities or in some companies, you can actually help to drive a lot of fundraising process yourself through the network. And in some cases, I brought through network investors that I know, was able to actually bring them to the process. You actually did a little bit more upsell on the round itself. So, but I would say it also evolves and with your experience. And once actually founders find that you can bring more than just helping on financial support side, and you can manage some initial investor pipeline and lead that process, then you're given that opportunity. But it also has to be built up. And I would say I've also seen CFOs that come from huge public companies and they transition to private companies that are in growth stage, and they had to learn themselves how to do that process. They actually never done this before. They know how FP&A function works. They know how earnings call works, but they don't know how actually talk to investors, how to drive term sheet process, how to negotiate in different terms, how to push on valuation, like how to sell. It's really a sell process. And what's interesting, it's an opportunity to analyze the business and success of the business and show it to external users, how potentially much more you can achieve and why they should be interested in this opportunity. So a very different skill set, and I would say almost like a sales skill set that is not very typical, definitely not accounting skill set and definitely not a finance skill set. So I would say it's a sales / strategic type of requirements that you actually build. But again, I think everyone can build it, and as long as I got blessed in my career, and when I asked for opportunities, they were given to me. So I would say if I have not achieved something, it's because I didn't ask for it.
Like a good role. What's your favorite part about board meetings?
My favorite part is
when they're over.
My favorite part, dinner after. My favorite part is shipping the deck, because I would say most of the work that goes for me is actually happening before board meeting happens. So it's usually a couple, 2-3 weeks of process ahead, where we spend actually long days and nights making sure all the materials are good. And the moment you click the button and send the summary and update in the deck, that's when I feel 80% of work is over. And then you just actually present and have conversations. So that's my favorite part. So actually being able to ship it. And then my favorite part also is when board members review those materials ahead of time and ask really good questions. That's also my favorite part. I really like board members that care and deep dive understand the business, because it's not always the case. Sometimes it's very informative and you just come out as like, okay, we've done the work, but there is no value out of it. And when we really see being challenged or been given some interesting pieces of thought where maybe we didn't think about something, that's always, to me, very intellectually challenging and interesting.
What is the question that you hate the most, and what is the question you wish they would spend more time asking at the board level?
Interesting. What question do I hate the most? I don't think I've ever had any question like this, except for maybe like some feedback that comes too late. I would say when you providing some updates on the business or giving a lot of upfront information for quarters in a row, and then you're hearing feedback that is maybe at that point, I mean, still relevant, but irrelevant in a way that it's been going for multiple years or multiple quarters. Some matter, some area has been mentioned, and now you actually start bringing it up. So just the timeliness of question, I hate that. Just shows that you didn't appreciate or focus on strategic understanding of some matter. And what I wish could be asked more, I always like when there are more metrics type of questions asked, when someone will always tries to think about business from different angles. How about this? How about this type of area to think about? Always pricing suggestions on how you can price some new potential financial opportunities, monetization opportunities. To me, those are interesting. And again, usually, I mean, I get a good amount, sometimes more, and I like that. And yeah, I would say those are my favorite. When actually someone asks me questions that stretches me as a CFO and helps me to think about potentially new monetization or strategic opportunities for the business that I may not have thought through. So helps a lot.
Got it. And one of the constant challenges for a CFO in a venture-backed startup is growth versus profitability. How do you think about that?
Well, recently seems like the market is moving towards more profitability focus. I mean, it's like reality of this current market state. It's always interesting balance. I think the function of growth and profit has to be just in line with business fundamentals. I mean, growth, as long as you can show that every dollar I invest in the business returns in a very healthy, good way. I mean, no one will ever say no to this. But I think some companies tend to focus on the growth, where you invest a lot upfront and burn upfront with no result. And that's where I would be concerned. I'll just say that the market currently definitely turned to focus on profitability. Doesn't mean right away, but means more of an understanding to what that path is in the near future. And again, near doesn't mean 3 months, but like 12 to 3 years horizon. And actually, ability to do that and understand how you can manage your business, I think just also tells really well about founders' ability to understand how they're thinking long-term about the business. I actually would say, I've been to quite a few companies at this point through different economic cycles, and Square was actually an interesting one because we were during more like recession, 2008, 2009, started company. And the fundamentals were always focused because of the fear of 2008. Fundamentals were always like understanding what is the path on the long run. Again, never like short run, but general, like while growth is not sacrificed. And then I think in the past 5 years, we got very lucky, all of us, with a lot of VC capital available. And we definitely seen a lot of stories when based on ideas, companies raise billions. And I think that time is definitely changing, and investors are again just looking at fundamentals, which is, for me as a finance person, always should be the case. And I think it's critical, but I think both are important, but you just need to understand the quality of each. Profitability, understanding the path and what's the window and why is that window, and being able to understand what contributes to profitability. How do you manage your burn? In general, like if you need to extend it to a longer period, and how you can grow your revenue. And growth is always about quality of growth, not dumping $10 million of marketing and driving growth. And then once you stop, you have no growth whatsoever. It just tells me fundamentally something is off on that business. So you need to be able to show how can you make investments, but they need to be able to pay back.
Love it. Great answer. So as you look back, you talk about a lot of young up and coming finance people looking to get to a stage in their career that you've accomplished in a quite early age. What might be something that sounds counterintuitive as you think about advice given to them?
Yeah, I would say counterintuitive is partnering with product and engineers as part of your job, but it's truly a really great investment if you do so. There's so much value that you can get out of investing into those relationships. And I would say also, it's always assumed that, accounting, finance is all about numbers. But like I said, data is very critical. So learning, like for example, at Square, everyone had to learn SQL, which I never thought could be the case. But very valuable, especially in the startup environment. If you can self-service yourself by doing most of the work that big companies do through additional resources, it's super helpful. So I would say those probably things, again, like focusing more on a startup type of experience, that would be advised. But I think everything else probably would be already known through Google.
And potentially with GPT 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 coming out soon, connecting people more directly with their data. Last question. You've now had an experience of working in early stage, in growth stage, in public companies, as a CFO in roles. What do you think what any misconceptions in the market about the role of the CFO, and any tools or software that you think feels missing for the evolution of the new role of a CFO?
I don't know about many misconceptions, but I think there could be often mismatch in terms of general understanding what CFO does and at what stage what you need out of CFO. That's, I would say, the most common mistake let's say sometimes early stage startups bring, let's say, CFO of, I don't know, Walmart, thinking, wow, this is going to be so great for us. But typically those people, they don't know how to build processes. They've been out of day-to-day building things for many years. And if you're looking to bring someone who actually needs to get the job done, like you need to look for someone who actually had been doing this recently. And I often talk to founders, like they let this CFO go, or like there was not a match because the person is very good at selling, but actually they cannot get the books closed, which, I mean, it's not a surprise because you need to understand what the real stage of the business you are and what challenges you have. So you hire the right person. So the misconceptions would be cleared as long as you know what you need and what skill set the person has. Because again, there are CFOs of public companies that where the job is to really drive returns to investors and external shareholders. They have to build the story and drive and push the business for it. Versus when you're early stage company, you just need to make sure processes are built and you're helping the company to manage capital well and make sure that you actually keeping everything in good, if it's of course fintech, in a good regulatory environment, and just managing more, I would say, not basic, but really more just operational processes. And yeah, very critical. As it comes to second part of the question.
Yeah, what's the biggest unsolved problem in the market for accountants or CFOs today?
I mean, I would say recently, I would say there is always something to solve. I see with the AI, and I don't want to sound like this person who is so driven by AI, but I would say AI is real. And I see so much opportunity that we can implement through AI. Definitely still see so many companies, especially bigger companies, not being able to automatically drive a lot of future forward understanding of the business. And there's so many things, especially in FP&A world, still done in spreadsheets. As it comes to reconciliation processes, right? A lot of them are still done manually. I think we have seen a massive shift in the past 10 years, and I've been part of it, how we've seen a lot of amazing tools and products appear where AP Live became easier, AR, just closing the books, definitely a lot faster. Reporting became better, but still there is a lot of manual process even today, I would say, especially in FP&A. I think wake-up call was for Treasury. When the SVB went down, a lot of companies realized that there is more opportunity to manage your treasury, your runway, your just banking infrastructure in general. So, and I would like to see how with AI also we can potentially build more data-driven machine learning approach, how we can think of the business in a more strategic way as well. Yeah, today, like I said, it's not like hopefully to replace CFO, but really how can we utilize CFOs in more strategic capacity by giving more insights that I build out in more automated way into the business so we can make maybe even more efficient decisions.
Yeah, well, it sounds like there's still a lot of job security for accountants and CFOs out there for
absolutely.
the meantime.
Yeah.
Nadia, thank you so much. It was such a great pleasure to have you on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I was so excited about Nadia's interview that I actually asked her to come back and share a little bit more details because it was just so interesting and we ran out of time. So I want to go into just a couple little bit more details about your time at Square and Robinhood. So we go back into this mindset again at Square. You're on the accounting team and you're prepping for an IPO, which is either every accountant's biggest dream or biggest nightmare, either way. But we'll talk about what are some of the things as you look back that took the longest to prepare from an accounting perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is more specific to my experience being in a fintech company and one of the biggest fintech companies that was doing IPO at that time, which is, again, very complex infrastructure around understanding how different processes go in and out. as it comes to accounting. So at Square specifically, every movement, every swipe had to be recorded, and understand additional products that were built on top of just payments had to be captured. And as the company, of course, was growing, things lived in different places and not always necessarily talk to each other. So the biggest difficulty was putting all the pieces together and making sure that we have one full picture of all of the activity, and at the end of the day, how we get comfortable with all the ins and outs, and how we not only internally get comfortable, but also externally, how everyone gets comfortable with it. And that was one of the biggest ones. But of course, that's specific to fintech and Square. I would say on top of that, and I would probably relate to some other industries as well, I hear that a lot as close efficiency, just making sure books get closed fast, but also in an efficient way, so you didn't miss something very substantial. So reconciliation piece that I just described, understanding ins and outs, directly impacted the timeliness of our close process. And as you may imagine, when you go public, you want to be in position to get your books closed really fast and get visibility into where the business stands and prepare for upcoming earnings and work on the message to external investors. And of course, if you're taking much longer time period, you may run into significant issues where they can impact areas, even including stock price itself. So you want to be able to control the narrative of how the company is doing and being able to make sure everything is okay. So close process itself is the biggest, I would say, nightmare probably for every person you talk to. As it comes to IPO readiness, you want to be able to do it really fast and making sure it's complete, so you didn't miss something while you're rushing to close the books. And then you actually have to potentially report on some additional changes to your business. So I would say that's my specific experience, and would stretch once again how critical it is in the fintech focused company where there are a lot of money movements to understand how all different systems work and talk to each other. So at the end of the day, you can get full visibility on all of your money movements.
And I'm assuming something like this is not just a bunch of accountants. So can you also tell me about how many people are on the accounting team at this time? And then I'm assuming you're working with maybe product or engineering or consultants to have some of this work done?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, as a matter of fact, the team got smaller as a result of the project, because at some point the team started getting so big, focusing on just money movements and understanding of it, that we had to take a step back and understand, hey, we overall understand the logic, what those people are doing, how they view activity from different sources, how we can actually build that logic into a more automated way. So it took actually us to find the good solution. Back then it was some close efficiency tool that offered cash matching, what we call, when you can understand how by using logic on different bank statements, on different reporting tools, you can build overall summary in the logic and categorize things. So we used the tool, we used third-party provider, we used internal product team, internal engineering and reconciliation team, what we call. So we brought all these people together to make sure that all the activities that live in different things, we understand the logic, we document the logic, and then at the end of the day, we automate the logic, because we should not be repeating the same task, and accountants should not be recording things that they know are repetitive of nature and hiring more and more people just to do that. So it took about 6 months of cleanup, building the logic, and putting a tool and automation in place. Some of it was very custom to Square, so I wouldn't say you replicate it elsewhere, but the process probably is translatable to other businesses. And I would say the team itself, on the accounting team, we kept adding what we call cash accountants. And it was at some point we had 5 or 6. And then we ended with one admin process, more like IT admin, who only would be responsible maybe 25% of their time, that all reporting has been complete, reconciled, and any exceptions, of course, there could be new rules created, could be new products launched, could be new resources available, there is new logic to be built out and put into the process. And product team and engineering team that stepped in to help, they were removed from the task as soon as we actually succeeded on it.
Amazing. Right. So, okay. So you're prepping for the IPO, which obviously was very successful. I have to imagine that part of your training as an accountant is looking at how complicated this is. I'm also worried that the company is just not profitable. Now, I know that's part of the story that gets told from the CEO and the bankers, but what's going through your mind as a CPA preparing this and planning to go public as an unprofitable company?
Actually, it's a very interesting, again, unprofitable at that point, but understanding there is a path. I would say that's the mindset that was used. And of course, the company that's not profitable or generating significant profit at that point, you have to be always cost efficient. And that's exactly where at some point by using 5 new people on the project becomes too expensive, and investing extra time for some period of time, which will solve this problem in the next 10 years and will save substantially to the business, actually goes into mind. And I would say it's a combination of both cost efficiency, but also in general, time efficiency itself. It was just not possible to continue adding more people as the business was getting more complex and there was more logic to continue to be booked. So we had to put a pin on it and really take a step back and think how we can make it more simple, even with more upfront investment for a short period of time. But overall, I would say if you just imagine 5 people salary costs for 1 year in 10 years period, the investment we made probably was 5 to 10x more efficient in the long run, and definitely contributed to overall help and support to be more profitable.
And then are there any specific things from an accounting point of view that you look back on that you thought took particularly longer than you expected or scared you prospectively?
I would say in general, I think things become scarier and take longer as the business grows. And if you don't invest upfront in automation and some tooling, it definitely becomes scarier in the long run. I know it's sometimes not very obvious that it's worth time and potential some financial investment to put upfront to make that investment and to minimize the pain. But there is pretty direct correlation in my experience of lacking upfront investment in certain area that may be growing and becoming more complex. And then that area becoming really intimidating, and where you are getting to the point where you no longer can reconcile the whole piece of information or data. You no longer actually can keep track of it. You no longer can put enough resources to actually resolve it ever. And I would say I'm sure those specific examples could be around revenue, could be around the general movements of different activity. And I've seen it through different careers that I've had, that type of complexity appearing in one way or the other. If at Square it was more related to money movements, I was at another company where we worked on helping nurses to be put on the jobs and actually collect for the time that nurses work for the hospital from hospitals. The business, of course, during COVID took off so substantially. We have never seen growth like this, but also we did not have automated process into understanding how fast we can collect from hospitals. And that became a nightmare, intimidated everyone to the point where all of your business becomes anticipation of how long will it take to get money back from hospitals. And I'm sure there are stories like this for everyone. And some of it could be a good problem in a way that you grew so fast and blew up due to certain circumstances. It's great. You are in hyper-growth stage. But on the other hand, hyper-growth usually means to me that there will be a lot of fast-growing pain that you potentially will have to resolve in a way that you did not think it's going to be as easy.
So speaking of hypergrowth, if we transition over to Robinhood, I want to talk about two potentially different lenses to the same issue. So one coming from an accounting background, and then two stepping into a finance and a strategy role. What's your view on a free product that can take off tremendously fast, like Robinhood, that I'm assuming incurs like some upfront cost structures and then making money sort of later on?
Yeah, I would say it's interesting because as soon as Robinhood product actually took off and there was a product market fit, there was a monetization, maybe just not visible to users in a way, which is another concept that's been discussed a lot on the media called payment for order flow, when you actually monetize from different liquidity providers. But to your point, I think offering free product that has a strong product market fit can definitely always lead to hypergrowth, and doesn't always have to be even free. It could be just very good pricing at that point, and the product is just so great. And that's what I've seen at a few other companies when we offered paid product, but were extremely competitive. There was high demand for it. That's what definitely drives hypergrowth. And it could be in a matter of a couple of years at Robinhood, we achieved something that companies don't see in terms of growth in 10, 20 years. Just that type of multiple growth on both revenue, user growth, but also means complexity itself.
Well, any thoughts as you think about through your career on pricing, on a product-led growth for sales-led growth, enterprise sales, freemium models?
I think it's a great question. I actually would say one area where I see lots of opportunities, the way how so far I witnessed that to work is a lot of CFOs tend to adopt pricing, looking at examples of other companies, successful companies in the similar space, or just through their experience, trying to apply similar case studies. I would say definitely there is no really good rule on how pricing works. It's one of the opportunities where I can see a lot of possibilities that we can potentially even change the way how products work. And definitely would be interesting to see what else is out there. In terms of freemium models, again, I think it's a great concept to get started, to get an understanding if you have strong adoption and demand for the product. But at the end of the day, you have to make sure that once you turn on the monetization or actually start charging for services, users still continue paying for it and there is a demand. So I think freemium as an entry point could be interesting, or just adopting general set of very basic products and then offering something more premium that's going to be in high demand for extra fee. That's fine too. But I would say, actually, speaking of pricing, is definitely one of the areas where there is a playbook for SaaS companies, there is a playbook for fintechs, but definitely there is a little bit more room for innovation.
What do you mean by that?
When companies start, they just tend to utilize pricing that's already known in the similar field. And it's not always necessarily focused on what is the key feature that users or your potential customer wants to pay for. Oftentimes it's just done based on what everyone else does, and without understanding what is the significant value in your business where you can bring most of the revenue. You tend to do that a lot later once you actually end up having sophisticated finance and data team and having deeper understanding of your business, where most of the growth and utilization comes from. But it's not always the case for the company that is starting. Pricing is usually set up based on what's known, what others have done. And it's not evident that the pricing is actually perfect for the long run. And examples would be many times at Square and Robinhood, we changed the way how we charge for things as we actually learn more about the business. If you're lucky and growing, you definitely have opportunity to continue doing so. But I would say most of the time, I haven't seen a company that got their pricing correct from the get-go.
You talked about two different examples of hypergrowth. One, when you just have product market fit a lot, or another when there's potentially a world-changing event like COVID that makes a business take off. One of the challenges in doing that is, as a finance leader, is setting a budget. Any advice for people going through this on how to think about setting budget for rapid hiring or product development?
Well, I would say For example, like COVID, I think every CFO will say they scratch their budget as soon as it happens, and it never worked. As it comes to setting up the budget, which usually aligns with either something we call annual plan, annual goal, I think what's the most critical piece is to really work with founders and understand what is the ambition and what will it cost to execute on the ambition. So it's always the balance of how much we have on hand, how much we have available in terms of resources, also how much we want to grow, what is the vision for this year, and what does it take to get there. And it's really a collaboration process. You have to, of course, as a finance person, always push for more revenue outcome, less spend, and other stakeholders that you may work with as from other teams may push for actually different. They want more resources, but achieving less financial results, right?
Not marketing or sales, right? Definitely not marketing. Definitely not marketing or sales.
Absolutely. Could be any teams depending on the structure of the company. But yeah, it's really finding the balance. And I would say that's where CEO is actually heavily involved, at least on an annual basis. And that's where clarity to what the business is doing comes, and has to be really alignment with all different parties. So you cannot just, finance people, we're good with numbers. We can make up any numbers. We can build any model. But at the end of the day, the model has to be supported by commitment from all different stakeholders. And those stakeholders have to be aware what it takes to achieve certain results. So I would say my goal would be, as you're setting up the budget, understand first with your CEO or your leadership team what is high goal, and then go with people on every team and understand how they see that result to be achieved. And of course, understand what are the financial goals behind that, and make sure that all of those pieces are put together. And at the end of the day, the plan is clear to everyone. And also once the budget is developed, it's clear to others and they acknowledge, they commit to meeting that budget.
I heard some advice from a product leader once that said they know their job is done when everybody's just a little bit unhappy. I feel like a budget process could be similar.
It's tough. I would say the only thing that is really, and again, budget is more of a function, I would say, a little bit later stage company, right? So we're not talking about early stage startup where you're still trying to find product market fit. But it's definitely something where you have to challenge everyone, right? So you have to ask everyone, are you sure you need that much to achieve that? And it's really just asking questions from different ways. And it could be I see that because I get to be challenged myself as part of the process as the way just to stretch your thinking and being open-minded. So, and it's one of the processes where it's very critical to build very clear communication upfront with people and being able to collaborate and come with an open mind and not push back immediately. Because if someone asks for a lot of money as part of the budget, it could be that they will also bring really significant results, and you have to analyze in depth what that means.
I love it. That was perfect way to end. Thank you, Nadia, for coming back a little bit longer. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks again.
Thanks for tuning in to Turpentine Finance. Share it with your executive team, direct reports, friends, and family. And if you want to support the show, the best ways are to leave a review wherever you're listening and subscribe. Turpentine Finance is part of Turpentine, the podcast network behind Moment of Zen, Turpentine VC, Age of Miracles, and more. Shows for experts by experts in tech. Turpentine Finance is part of Turpentine, the podcast network behind Moment of Zen, Turpentine VC, Age of Miracles, and more. Shows for experts by experts in tech.